Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us at this regular meeting of the Madera City Council and a special meeting of the Madera Public Finance Authority and a special meeting of the Madera City Council as the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. If we can have roll call, please.
Mayor Chairperson Andrew Medellin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Authority Member Jose Rodriguez.
Here.
Council Authority Member Cece Foley Gallegos.
Here.
Council Authority Member Will Oliver.
Here.
Council Authority Member Derek Robinson.
Here.
Council Authority Member Charles Rigby.
Here.
And Council Authority Member Donald Hawley.
Thank you so much, Sonia. We have a treat this evening, ladies and gentlemen. From Teach One to Lead One, and leading us in the invocation will be Miss Hannah Cunnings. If you will stand with me, please, for the invocation.
Thank you. Father in heaven, we come before you humbly tonight, Lord, to ask for your guidance, for your wisdom, and for your protection upon this meeting. Lord, we thank you for the city of Madera and the people that live and work in the city of Madera. And we call the city of Madera blessed. Father, I ask you for wisdom tonight for Andrew Medellin, our mayor, as well as our other leaders, Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Gallegos, Mr. Oliver, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Rigby, and Mr. Hawley, along with all of the other members that are here tonight and their staff. Father, we also ask you for your protection and your wisdom and your guidance for our police departments, our fire departments, and for our schools. We thank you for being with our teachers as they prepare to come back into school this fall. We say this tonight in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you very much, Hannah. If you'll join me in the pledge, please. Ready, salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment, the first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council or authority on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council/authority. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked to identify themselves and state the subject of their comment. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold that comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing item is opened. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusions should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. Is there anybody wishing to speak under this definition? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Katie Sierra. I'm here with a concern regarding animal control. On Monday, I was out front of my mom's house and I was bit by a stray dog that had a collar on. It was unprovoked. I walked out of my car. I called to the dog, tried to find the owners, and the dog jumped up and bit me in the stomach. I called animal control. It took about an hour for them to come out. By that time, the dog had left. But I was able to call them back later when the dog did reappear, and the animal control was able to catch the dog, and it turned out the owners lived like a few houses down. The animal control took the dog back to the owners and left the dog with the owners. The owners stated to animal control that they had vaccinated the dog for rabies about 2 weeks ago, but they had no proof that the vaccination had been done. There was no paperwork. At that time, animal control, I guess this is their policy, decided to leave the dog with the owners and have it what they call quarantine for 10 days with the owners. And if any symptoms of rabies were to appear in those 10 days, then I guess the owners would contact animal control. I wasn't sure exactly what would happen, or if animal control would come out and check with the owners to see if anything had happened. The problem is that we found out as soon as animal control left, the owners gave the dog away to somebody else. And they wrote us a note saying, oh, we're so sorry, and we don't want to have the dog around anymore because it could be dangerous. Well, that, makes sense. But at the same time, then I'm left wondering whether or not this animal has any signs of, or it's going to show any signs of rabies, and it's completely out of my ability to check anymore. So I ended up not getting the rabies shot. because I guess the doctor, when I went to see the doctor, he advised against it. He said there's a very small risk of getting rabies nowadays if the animals aren't feral, but it's still something that I'm concerned about. My mom has some further information about this same incident.
Thank you, Katie.
Of course, I was super concerned because she was coming to my house to take care of my tortoises.
I'm sorry, just for the record, name.
Oh,
and
I'm
address,
sorry,
please.
Kathleen Sierra. Do you need address or anything?
Please.
No. Oh, 424 North End Street.
Thank you.
Which is where the incident occurred. She had 2 of my grandchildren in the car at the time and was moments away from bringing them out of the car. So I was very concerned. I was concerned that they had left the responsibility of quarantining the dogs to the neighbor. And I went to the police department and talked to them, and they said that's their practice. But then today I had a bigger concern. As I was going to the police department, I happened to call a friend who told me that an acquaintance of mine, Terry De La Guerra, had been attacked across the street at the Methodist Church at 8:30 on Sunday morning. The dog broke her arm. She was hospitalized for 48 hours. She wanted to be here tonight, but she said she just wasn't ready. She is going through the rabies vaccinations. I think there's 9 of them. Pretty uncomfortable, but that was her choice. She was more worried, I suppose. And I guess my big concern was the hospital reported to the police department with a fax at 2 o'clock on Sunday about this dog. And the fact that they didn't realize that the same dog within a block of the first incident was attacking someone the next morning at 8 o'clock, that's my major concern. We were told that they don't have staff on Sunday, which is another huge concern. When there's a dog like that loose in the neighborhood with children, I think it needs to be better staffed. Again, it wasn't until today that they found the dog, that they went to the neighbors and figured out where they'd sent the dog, and it's now in quarantine, which makes me really happy. And they've guaranteed me that it'll stay there for 10 days. And if any symptoms develop, they will euthanize and analyze the brain. But I guess my biggest concern is the lack of animal control. I don't know how many there are. People have told me different rumors, but I don't think it's adequately staffed. We have a lot of pit bulls in this town, and they are not very friendly. My son is a veterinarian, and one of the reasons he chose not to come back to Madera was because he didn't want to deal with pit bulls every day. So I think we need to be concerned about our animal control here in Madera. Thank you.
Mrs. Sierra, thank you very much. And Katie, thank you for having the courage to come down here and have to explain that ordeal again. What I'd like to do, if I could get your phone. First, I'd like to introduce you to our Chief of Police, Chief Lawson. Okay, wonderful, thank you. And if you could leave your number, I have your address. If you can leave your number with Sonia up here, please. And I'd like to contact you over the next day or two. It's my high school teacher, by the way.
It's very familiar.
I was hoping we could meet under different circumstances, but it's still good to see you. Thanks again. Anybody else wishing to speak under public comment, please come forward.
Hello, I'm Eddie Block, 916 East Cleveland Avenue. I'm here for 2 reasons for the Elks tonight. I want to invite you guys. We're having a casino night, August 3rd. It's $45 a person, but it goes to the Elks and it goes to all of our great things we do. If anybody doesn't know what the Elks do, if you have a 3rd grader around, every 3rd grader in Madera every single year gets a dictionary by us. We give out scholarships every year. The Elks in a total nationwide gave over $3 million in scholarships last year. We helped the veterans, and we donated a lot of food for the Paloma Ranch recently. So if anybody wants to come out, that would be really great. And speaking of veterans, this Saturday, my friends at the Elks and I will be serving all the veterans at the VA hospital a tri-tip lunch. So if anybody wants to come down at 11 o'clock at the VA hospital, we'll be there. And then now a personal thing. I don't know if anybody was here last night, but it was a war zone out there. It was pretty bad. And I just want to express to people, please be courteous to the other city members. You know, the police were out in force. They were busy. I understand people couldn't even get through to the phones. They were that busy. And, you know, it's not courteous to the rest of us. My dogs actually broke underneath my house, and I had to cut a hole in my floor to get them out. So that's just dogs. Can you imagine veterans? If I think it sounds like a war zone, can you imagine what the veterans feel? So I'm just asking everybody, stop it. We don't need this stuff, you know? That was pretty bad for all the people and the veterans last night, especially the animals. So we got to figure something better out to do on the 4th of July, because I'm sure Chief arrested a lot of people last night and gave out a lot of tickets. So just be kind to other people on Thanksgiving. We're all patriotic, but we don't got to blow stuff up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Block. I really appreciate it. And on behalf of the City Council, I thank you to the Elks Club. They are a top-notch service club here in the city of Madera, and what you do and the scholarships you give away, as well as your support with the veterans and the VFW, we really appreciate your service. Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak under public comment, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment and move on to presentations. Our first presentation from the Madera County Library Improvements is going to be Patrick Fitzgerald and Maria Miranda. Good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Maria Miranda. I'm with the County Administration General Services Division. And I'm here with Patrick Fitzgerald, our county librarian, and we're here to share some exciting news for the county's library's main branch here on G Street. We will be undergoing our first phase of renovations in the coming months, which will focus on the children's area. Since we were able to do so with the help of the City of Madera's annual contribution to the library operations, we wanted to come before you today and present the project and our renderings. Before we discuss the renovations, we do want to briefly describe the current conditions of the library. Many of you know that visit the library. There's end-to-end shelving in the children's section, which tends to get messy and leaves no real room for activities. Parents find it difficult and uncomfortable to interact with their children in the children's area. Tutors and students find it difficult to work together. The technology is out of date. What the children's area really needs is a more open space plan to allow for activities and story time, more comfortable seating for parents and children, a better tutoring and homework designated areas, and updated technology such as iPads and laptops. So here are just a few pictures of the current state of the library. You can see the crowded, messy shelves, the lack of comfortable seating. We have the lovely green carpet and the huge wooden circulation desk, which are all part of our first phase renovations.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so we just wanted to go into the project a little bit more. So we were able to get a new design for the main branch, thanks in part to a state library grant that provided us with a design consultant and $5,000 towards furnishings with the finished project. So we've actually got a few different funding agencies that are kind of all teaming up to do this project. Phase one is a revamped, more spacious children's area. So phase one is mostly concentrating on the children's area. We're also replacing the main information desk where you walk in, the big boxy desk where you walk in, and it's going to be one point of service. Currently, you've got the information desk where you walk in the door, and then you've got a reference desk where we end up shuttling a lot of people to as well. And we just can't quite see the point in having a person walk in the door and then telling them to go somewhere else. The building's not so big that we can't accomplish all that in one space. There's a big wood partition that we're going to let go of that divides the children's area from the rest of the building. We are going to get new paint throughout the facility. The carpet's going to go. And as we said before, this is, we're funding this with appropriations from the county, from the city, from the design grant, and actually from the Friends of the Library, who will come in at the end and help us with some of the technology needs on the project. We've got a couple future phases that we've sort of, that we've planned out, but we're not going to fund and do just yet. But in the near future, we'd like to do a young adult teen area. We've got a young adult section of books that is way in the back and is kind of hidden away. And we'd like to bring that section out to a more visible area of the library, create a functional space there as well that kids could actually meet in, and we could get some programming going there. We would like to furnish that space eventually and create a small art gallery on one of the walls, and provide an inviting, comfortable atmosphere for our young adults. And then eventual phase 3 would be a reconfigure in the adult section along with some new furnishings and some sort of small group meeting area with privacy and smart boards that we could accomplish in the adult section of the library. So this rendering here shows the children's area. It shows, it shows a new information desk to the bottom right, less boxy, kind of more, functional looking desk that we'll be able to do our reference and our circ from. In the top left, we've got a kind of a mat in a children's area where kids could actually get down on the floor safely and comfortably, and actually be working with the books or working with different toys or whatever in that area. And then we've got more seating to be able to do some in-person tutoring both next to that area and then towards the middle. In the far right, we've got a media area where we've actually got some comfortable seating for the parents. That's something we don't really have right now. Every kid that comes in there, comes accompanied by some parents. And, this is a place where parents actually exchange a lot of information, but there's really nowhere comfortable in the area for them to do so. That'll also be a media area. There will be, we're going to get some iPads in that area for kids to use, as well as a couple of AWEs that we have currently. And throughout, some of the shelving is going to be replaced with bin shelving that will allow the kids to, and that's the kind of light brown that you see, and that'll allow kids and parents to flip books, front to front, kind of like being in an old vinyl shop, rather than looking at shelf, side labels that don't allow you to see much of the cover. Okay, so this next rendering just shows an updated reference desk on the left. Like I said, we've got a big box of a desk at the moment, or updated circulation reference desk, excuse me. And it shows the wood partition down. And on the right, it shows, did I do that? Yeah, kind of a cross view of the activity area in the children's section. And okay, and on the left there, it shows that we've got a reading corner that we're going to accomplish with the space, and then it shows the media corner that I was describing a second ago. That's it.
Very nice. Thank you very much for that. As we were in negotiations with the county, one thing was for sure, that we needed to invest in our county library, because there's obviously a lot of city residents that use that library. I think we all have at one time or another. And so we certainly appreciate you coming down and giving us a little updated info on how things are going to look. And I like the gleam in your eye when you say we're getting rid of the carpet. That was like first and foremost. As soon as you got a few dollars, it's like the carpet is going, right?
Oh yeah.
But we really, really appreciate the update and what you're doing with the county library, and for so many that you serve, from schools still bringing children down there to people really concerned sometimes over not being open long enough. And I like to hear that. I've had a number of people tell me that I wish the hours were extended. And so that's always a great thing. Like our downtown, our county library is really the backbone of who we are. So thank you so very, very much for giving us an update. Councilman Oliver has something to add.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Patrick and Maria, for the presentation. And yeah, I think it's important that we continue to invest in really what are thought centers in our community. And all too often, I think these are some of the things that we see or have seen in recent years on the chopping block or not being invested in. And so I'm certainly proud to, with this council, support that endeavor and contribute in a small but meaningful way. I had a question. Recently, I helped organize a community event commemorating Bobby Kennedy's 50th anniversary of his visit to Madera. And first, thank you for hosting us. And we were able to have it at the library. Yeah. But really what was so neat is I think a lot of folks that attended hadn't been there in a while. So what opportunities exist for some of those after-hour maybe events or for service clubs or others that may have community initiatives that may also share a dual purpose in showcasing the library and your facilities, as well as programs that you have available?
Well, even though our hours of service are limited for sure, and we'd like to get somewhere with that in the future. As far as groups, programs, and all that kind of stuff, all of that does and can continue to happen after hours. And your event, you know, the Bobby Kennedy event was an example of that. We also have groups that meet in the meeting room after hours, even on Sundays. You know, we have a way of locking down the rest of the building, but still providing access to the Galloway room. And the restrooms. So that's actually open. It can, in a way, be a 24-hour. We don't really encourage people to meet at 1 in the morning, but we are able to give access to the building after hours. And when we're partnering with a group, then, you know, we open it up on the main floor, too, and do events like that.
That's great. Terrific. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Dr. Fitzgerald, Ms. Miranda, thank you so very, very much for coming down. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to the next time you come in when it's all complete and you can show us some more pictures. Great. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Moving on to our next special presentation, it is my honor at this time to introduce the chairman of the Housing Authority, Chairman Will Oliver, who will be at the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleased to come here and put on a different hat. And as the mayor had mentioned, this year I serve as the chairman of the Madera Housing Authority, and for those of you that do not know, among many different responsibilities and boards that the City Council serves on, one of those is as Board of Commissioners for the Housing Authority, and so we administer a lot of our public housing programs as well as Section 8 and whatnot. And so today we have this special opportunity to formally recognize former Chairman and Commissioner Charles Rigby for his efforts last year in that role. Among many things, he really inserted himself at the ground level with the Housing Authority, looking at ways to expand programming and expand the reach of services that we have available to our residents. And one of those projects was Pomona Ranch. And so most of you have probably read about it or heard about it, but under Charles's leadership and with in concert with many community partners and in the private sector, we were able to put together an innovative and first of its kind transitional homeless housing program for families in need during the cold winter months, and which is now you know, hopefully a model and standard for underutilized facilities like our migrant labor facility. And so with the retrofit of several housing units and under Charles's steadfast leadership, we're able to successfully place 26 people in housing. And of those, 100% are now in more permanent and stable housing through, again, a community of services that were made available. So this last year, Charles was recognized as Chairperson of the Year by the Pacific Southwest Regional Council of NARO, which is the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Agencies, I believe. And so we wanted to formally present the award to Commissioner Charles Rigby on receiving that worthy recognition. And Linda, did you want to add anything else about the award? Or?
Well, I might explain that NARO, of course, is a national organization. The regional area in California is where the award originates from. I might add that it was the first time a brand new nominee had been awarded the Commissioner of the Year, and it was for 2017. And they were looking for certain characteristics and traits, which he demonstrated. He has a spiritual bent to his life. They were concerned about other opportunities to serve other than in your city council position. So they were glad to hear about some of the other things that you do with both children and with your ministry. This award is given out every year, so we'll have to just keep trying because we have lots and lots of good people sitting on our city council.
Yeah, we do. That's right.
Absolutely. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, as Linda had mentioned, Charles has many different interests and wears a few different hats. And I think with this project, you kind of saw those interests meet at the intersection of his life, both as a youth pastor, seeing his passion for people and helping those who need a hand up, as well as a coach and a mentor to youth. He was definitely the quarterback of this project through and through. Helped get everybody at the table and heard all the cats, so to speak, and really showed profound leadership. And we're now moving forward with Pomona Ranch 2.0. So fortunately, we have a template to work off of, so it makes my job a little bit easier as chairman and with Vice Chairwoman Gallegos. So again, congratulations, Commissioner Rigby, and on a job well done. If you want to come up.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. Awesome.
You want a picture?
Awesome. Come on, Linda. Thank you.
Don't forget, I have a box for you.
Very cool. Congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you.
Linda Lee, I was going to ask, has anybody from Madera ever won that award? I don't believe so. You were the absolute first. Well deserved. Put Madera on the map. Thank you very much.
We're going for back to back.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do
Absolutely.
that back to back to back to back.
That's right. Doing God's work. Moving on to the consent calendar, is there any council member wishing to pull a consent calendar item? Councilman Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item B4 for further discussion.
Item B4, of course. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Yes, Mayor Medillin, I'd like to pull item B9 and B10 for further discussion.
B9 and B10, of course. And Councilwoman Gallegos.
I'd like to pull B11.
Any other council member wishing to further discuss any of the consent calendar items? If not, I will entertain a motion excluding items B4, B9, B10, and B11.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar excluding items B4, B9, B10, and B11. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Councilman Oliver, item B4.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is for a street paving project, and for the amount of $192,000. And I had a couple follow-up questions. One, to provide some additional clarification, Keith, on the ad alternatives that are with this project. Looking at the list of bidders, it looked like it was very close among a few. And then looking a little bit more deeply into some of the alternative packages, I wanted you to elaborate a little bit as to that.
Sure. The bid was awarded based on the low bid, and the low bid was the base bid, which we were planning on awarding no matter what. There were 3 ad alternates, and the base bid was based upon, the award was based upon base bid plus all 3 alternates. California contract law allows us to go ahead and do it that way, and then if we do not have sufficient funds to go ahead and do everything, say the bids come out a little bit higher than what we expect, we can go ahead and pick and choose on the ad alternates. So what we had was a situation where we were short on funding, so we removed alternate 3 and went with base bid plus alternate 1 and alternate 2.
Okay. And can you elaborate as to that area of work with those alternates? What might that include?
I'm sorry, I didn't get into detail. I believe that was just adding on additional streets. So typically what we do is we select a number of streets, and I don't know what those specific ones were, but we'll pick a base amount, and there are streets all over town, in fact. We do that thinking that our unit prices for the project are going to be sufficient. So each one of the ad alternates represented adding a few more streets to the project.
I think lastly, looking at the list, we had several out-of-town, contractors bid on this work, as well as a local company. And I just wanted to take the opportunity again to see if we can kind of look under every rock and at any example to see if there's any way that we can, in the RFP process, look at local impact and look at whether it be a local hiring component or goals that we can, at minimum, encourage. a contractor to try to reach in hiring our citizens or doing work with our local businesses. And so I know with this particular work, I mean, it's what's before us, but it's something that we've discussed several times before, and I really like us to see if there's any way at all to get creative. And I know that the state law and us being General Law City restricts us a bit in that regard, but if there's any way that we can, maybe encourage, I don't know if it be through incentives or, those local hire or local work provisions.
Sure. I'll work with the city attorney and see if there's any other. There's documentation out there that says how it's supposed to work, and of course we are a general law city, and charter cities have much more flexibility.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding item B4?
Move to approve item B4, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item B4 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, B9 and B10. We'll take them one at a time.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medellin. Item B9 is a resolution that's presented before us. And the question that I had was in regards to the fiscal impact. Going through the staff report, I know that we're going to retain a firm. It just wasn't clear if the payments to the IRS that are being made under $10,000, is that directly to the IRS, and the plus legal fees, is that for the firm?
Yes, that's correct. It indicates it's just under $10,000 is the payment that goes to the IRS. It's like $9,900 and change, I believe. And then the firm, there was an agreement approved some time ago with ORC out of San Francisco that handles these kind of things, and the fees I want to say were around $20,000, but I can get you the exact amount.
Okay, so I was assuming that's probably an amount that doesn't require us to bid. So just in the future, I would advise that we get those numbers there for us so that we know what's being presented.
That's fine. I know council did approve the contract with them,
okay,
but it's been some time, so.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the amounts on that plus legal fees. And that'll be the same question that I had for item B10. So
Same
thank
thing
you.
for both. So.
Any further questions about items B9 or B10? If not, I will entertain a motion for those two.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve consent items B9 and B10 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Councilwoman Gallegos, item B11.
Yes, I just wanted to have some clarification so that some of our audience and people that are live streaming will have some input on our Madera youth and how we're working this program and what it's all about.
Thank you, Councilwoman. This is an agreement that we've brought back before the council several times. We've at least 8 years been with Kingsview, used to be Ready, Set, Go, and now the program is called Skills for Success. And they work with in-school and out-of-school youth, and they teach them job readiness skills, and then they partner with local businesses and agencies, and we're one of those where they come to work for the city, not just the Parks Department, but any department in the city, and learn how to behave in a professional work setting. We've had some work at our senior sites. We've had some work in our recreation programs. The ones we have currently are in the Parks Department, Parks Division. We've actually ended up hiring some of their the youth who have gone through their program who actually receive a stipend from Skills for Success. So they're learning a lot about how to become a young professional, and our team coaches them on how to survive in the work world. So.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussions about item B11? Seeing none, I'll call for action.
I so move to approve B11 as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve item B11 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to item C1, this is a public hearing in consideration of a resolution adopting the City of Madera budget, capital improvement program, master fee schedule, and master penalty schedule for fiscal year 2018-2019. Mr. Prisbila.
Well, Mr. Mayor and Council, I have, Tim has graciously provided me some time to begin this process and talk a little bit about our general fund budget. A couple weeks ago, we came before you in a workshop and presented a budget that was hovering around $1.5 million deficit. At that time, we provided some alternatives for reducing that. The primary method to reduce it down to $900,000 was the freezing of 11 positions. We came away with kind of direction at council that's the path we wanted to take. Finance sharpened their pencils a little bit, and my hat's off to Tim, Susan, Eric, and their team. They've done a really good job. We reduced that deficit down to $1.3 million, and we've also included back in a senior planning position, and we're still at $1.3 million. So if I can, I would kind of like to just give a little history. Having been the chief of police for the last 5 years and working in the budget process for probably the last 15 years, I just want to share some personal experiences that I think I and many department heads have experienced in the budget process. And I want to say experiences, but I really want to clarify that as frustrations. Every year we are asked to, refine, sharpen our pencils, go back, find more money. The last 5 years in particular, we've had deficit budgets in each one of those years, as you can see up on your screen. In each one of those years, we have the ability to erase that. And to the tune of an average of $1.2 million, the lowest increase, meaning surplus, was $553,000. And I told myself when presented the opportunity that I was not gonna say the sky is falling. And apparently the rumors that you get a lobotomy when you get in this chair are true, because I did exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. We began at a $2.3 million deficit, and quite frankly, that scared the you-know-what out of me. And I thought there's no way I can take that to council. I challenged Tim at the time to reduce that. He and his team went back, and they did. And so that brings me full circle to the $1.5 million in our budget. But it also brings me full circle that what I would like to offer to you is that we run with the $1.3 million deficit. And I say that because of this slide that is in front of you, that we have an innate ability to reduce deficits. Last year was $900,000. The year before was 1.3, and we ended that year with a $1 million surplus. That's a very significant turnaround. And for the life of me or finance or anybody else, there really isn't an explanation how we do that. Typically, we run anywhere from 3 to 5% in budget expenditure, meaning we have that left. That's not $1 million. That's $500,000 to $800,000. Just things seem to work out, and so I'm reluctant to offer to council that we freeze positions, and we do so. If we do that, that has an impact on the service delivery that we provide to the city. 11 positions are very significant. That's 3 police officers. That's engineering. That's code enforcement. That's public works. Across the board, that freeze will be felt. And I would feel awful silly if I sat here. I won't be here, and that would mitigate that feeling. But I would feel silly if I advocated for a freezing of 11 positions, and then we erase this deficit again. That would just be a travesty to both this community and to the department heads that have to try and manage their departments with less people. And so my recommendation to you is to accept the $1.3 million deficit and write it out. We have reserves that if we actually realize that deficit, that we can cover that cost. And then next year, if we truly do incur a deficit, then we know where we're at, and then that can be a starting point. Clearly, we do have a revenue expenditure disparity. That's very evident. But for the last 5 years, we've had that same disparity, and we've been able to overcome that. And I'm just reluctant to say, let's make the drastic cuts now and impact that service delivery, and then when we erase it, that's tough to look people in the face and say, yeah, you didn't get this service because we didn't take a risk. In moving forward, we know that we have to look at things. I mean, we've got the study on developmental impact fees. That will be huge for us. We're obviously behind the curve on that, but moving forward, that will be huge. I challenged employees to come up with revenue plans, and I got 7 very, very good options that we will be moving forward on in looking to improve the fees that we provide. And just an example is business licensing. They've been the same for ever. For many, many, many years, and one of the suggestions was that we do a study and we look and see what's appropriate for that. And so I think if we continue exploring revenue options, we ride this year out, we see where we end up, we keep our service delivery status quo, we work internally on producing revenue for the city and moving us forward, and we see where things end up. So that's my recommendation on the general fund budget, and if you have any questions, we'll be glad to address them. If you're not comfortable with that, and I realize as the elected officials that's a tough call, I understand that, then we'll take direction on what it is that you want to see in your budget, and we'll move forward with whatever you suggest at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. Steve, if we can go back to that slide where you have your, yeah. So this is saying that on an average, we have a $1.2 million surplus.
Yes.
And what is our percentage, or what is our reserve balance that we should be at?
So by council action, the reserve balance is set at 30% of the general fund, and that's about 11.2. Is that about right? 11.4.
I think so. Let's see.
And so we're sitting on about $13 million right now. And I would expect, I think you'll see, or maybe we had a slide earlier, that right now we're projecting a $19,000 surplus in the year that we just completed. And I'm wagering with Tim that $19,000 will grow significantly. He said we paid more attention to the closing out of this last year, but I think we'll have a fairly significant surplus this year, as we have in the past. So yeah, so we're in a pretty good position.
So what you're presenting here before us tonight is, in the past we've been screaming, skies are falling. We make up that deficit and end up with a surplus.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing tonight, right? Okay. So before us, you want us to continue to ride with that 1.3 and let that be absorbed by the general fund. I mean, not the general fund, but the reserve fund.
I'm optimistic that we will continue the pattern of overcoming that deficit, but in the off chance that we don't, then the reserve would cover that shortfall. Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Any other questions of Mr. Frazier? Councilman Oliver.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, can you elaborate on those positions again? And you mentioned them by name, but can you?
11 positions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is I don't know if the title is senior engineer. There's a senior engineer. There's 3 police officers. There's 2 part-time code enforcement officers. There's a public works worker. And
there's a dispatcher.
There is a parks department manager. I don't know how many that is. How many have I given you
8.
at that point?
There was a dispatcher?
In a public safety dispatcher. And then we just added a, Wendy, who was the?
Yeah, you didn't say a planner.
After the budget hearing, we had the one individual put in the notice.
Sir,
Was that,
did you mention building?
No. Anyway, no, there were 2 public works. One had 25,000 paid out of the general fund, and the rest under other fees.
In building, you didn't mention another inspector or anything in building. Was that
Nope.
something that we had originally or no?
Building has other bodies. They have an individual retiring, but we have to replace that.
There is included in the budget a slight overlap so that Mark Quall can help the person replacing him get up to speed, much like they do with FTO officers, so they can work on their own.
So let's maybe take a look at the senior planner, for example. And I know, especially in meeting with businesses and business associations, as Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and Councilmember Rigby and I have done over the last several months on developing that business incentive deal. Certainly, processing of permits, the continuity of information at the front end, customer service at the counter, are all, very, important feedback that we've received. Almost as important, if not more, than any financial incentive to open a business. So with the senior planner position, how does that fast track and make us more business friendly? Can you maybe, Chris, elaborate as to how that will enhance your department's abilities and be more streamlined for our business community?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposal to add the senior planner. As you know, the city's planning staff really recovered from the recession kind of late. It's almost a byproduct of our budget slowly coming back and a hesitancy to add staff. At present, I have a total intellectual capital of just over 3 years between my 2 planners in-house, and we've been very busy. This last year, we increased our revenue by over $100,000, and that didn't come without some small additional level of work involved in it. Currently, right now, we're processing a project for 3 square miles of residential development, which will turn into something like 7,000 homes. We're working very hard to bring you a zoning ordinance update, which is a major work product that we really need to bring before you. And on the heels of that would be a rezoning of many of the properties in town to be consistent with our 2009 general plan. As you note, the council is very interested in incentivizing development in the downtown and with a reduction of fees, and in order to really respond to what we hope would be some aggressive desire to rehabilitate or repurpose individual properties in the downtown with our current staffing levels, well, most certainly we'd be challenged if that's something that, like the council, staff would encourage our business community to take advantage of that. Not only that, because of our increased volume, a lot of the in-house things that we do on behalf of the various departments in the city, this last year we completed something like $8,000 worth of $8,000 or $9,000 worth of environmental work on behalf of our engineering department and our capital improvement environmental work. Well, where that looks only like $8,000 or $9,000 on the books, that if that was done out of house, that might very well be $80,000 or $90,000 worth of cost to the city. And with the pressures on the engineering department to really continue to fast track capital improvement programs to get completed, we admit that we have a backlog coming out of the recession. It's important to continue to deliver that service as well. That all said, and I could keep going if you'd like me to, but I've been known to be long-winded. This is an important position. It allows us to fill a gap in our intellectual capital, to bring in someone with experience that can hit the ground running and allow for the department to continue to deliver services, and then at the same time respond to additional development pressures within the city to keep that city going in the direction that the council and the citizens of the city want it to go.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I can also point out, in 2008, at the beginning of the recession, we had 6 employees engaged in that activity. And I think all indicators is that we've reached that same level of service now, and we're effectively running that with 3. And so there's clearly a pretty significant disparity. And one of the things that we focused on since my being here is being able to provide a level of customer service, and we tend to struggle with that when there's more people coming in than we have people to deal with, and we're doing our best to provide that level of service, and yet from their perspective, all they're looking for is to get prompt service. No matter how good we treat them, if it's not prompt, it's not good, and we just can't deliver that. And one body will move us closer and allow us to do better, but it still doesn't address the overall need. But I have difficulty saying I need 3 positions when I'm facing a $1.3 million deficit. But keeping that at 1.3 and being able to include the senior planner, I think that's a recommendation that I should make, because it's a revenue producer. And not only does it provide customer service, but it moves the city forward. And in the workshop, we talked about that. We talked about the need to have a vision and be able to look at annexation. And Chris has talked about, and he started to address this, but you want to revitalize downtown, and it takes someone to put that to paper. Sure.
And with the senior planner, that allows them the opportunity to start doing that, and taking your vision and putting that into something that we can sell, because it's tough to sell if you don't have the visual aid. And so, without the position, that gets put with everything else. It gets kind of prioritized, and they're going to struggle to keep up.
Is that all, Mr. Councilman? Councilman Robinson.
Yes, it's like just like a home. When you have financial difficulties, then you do a lot of cutting. You stop going to the movies, dinner. You cook at home. You don't take unnecessary trips, and you sacrifice. I would feel more comfortable if we had more revenue coming in, plus if we sacrifice, like for instance, our health care. For 7 members on the board, we have to pay out over $150,000 a year. 7 members for a 4-year term is $300,000. I say the city, since I've been on the council for 6 years, $224,000, but not having health care. I have my own health care that I pay into. And you have to sacrifice. We were elected to serve, not to be served. We have CalPERS going up every, we have to pay into that every year. It was 7.5, now it's going down to 7. You can't depend on legislation to fix it. It may take time. Then we have trade wars going on with China, Europe, Canada, Mexico, and NAFTA. We have recession fears because we are a debtor nation. You have car registration going up, gas going up. The taxpayers, they want relief. They want us to be fiscal responsibility. Now, we had to make cuts, to our aging population. We had at Park and Rec, we had a dementia and an Alzheimer, like a babysitting. You know, I had someone call me up from the Republican Party, said, how come they cut that program out? You know, existing law requires that the California Department of Aging to administer the federal Older American Act in California and the Mello Granlund Older California Act, and impose various functions and duties on the department with respect to the administration and development of programs for older individuals. Existing law required the department in allocating specific state and federal funding to older individuals to ensure that priority consideration is given to elderly individuals identified as in greatest economic or social need. Existing law defined greatest social need for purpose of the act to mean the need caused by non-economic factors that include physical and mental disability, language barriers, culture and social isolation, including that caused by racial and ethnic status. And I'm just saying this to say that, you know, our elderly, you know, we can't kick them to the curb. You know, they need programs also. You know, we have people in this building right now that have people who have dementia. You know, for one, my mother, you know. So if we care about Madera and you want the best for Madera, then I think you should, if you're working, you have a job, who offer health care, why make the city pay for it? That's a lot of money. Chowchilla don't have it. They don't have health care. And they were on the verge of bankruptcy. So I think it would be more padding, you know, for the budget if we could save $158,000 a year and maybe hire another person, you know, for the business office. Make sure that we bring in more revenue.
Councilwoman Gallegos.
I agree with Councilman Robinson about sacrifices need to be made. Tell me if I'm wrong, Steve, that we have made sacrifices. We've frozen these positions, which has saved us money with benefits, their retirement, and their salary. Therefore, that is why we have the deficit, because they were budgeted for those employees. But with them being vacant, we have saved to this point that if we unfreeze these positions, we still will probably come ahead, because for only half of the year, we have not had them in those positions. And we budgeted for them in our budget, correct, Tim? So that's what it's showing.
So yes, you approved the budget tonight. PD, for instance, still has 5 vacancies. They will not be filled tomorrow. Probably won't be filled into the first quarter, and then you'll fill some. There'll be still significant savings. My point to bring this up is we have kind of developed a culture of the sky is falling. Mm-hmm. And then we limp into the new fiscal year. Your department heads are beat down for having to reduce their budget, go find M&O, cutting positions, and we don't really find our stride as a city until October, November. I'm saying I think there's an advantage to us running into the new year, moving forward aggressively, doing the things that we need to do to make the city better. And again, I apologize for falling into the sky is falling, and I really do. And I wish I hadn't. And I think we should move forward aggressively. We've got the funds here. I can almost guarantee you that we will not have a $1.3 million deficit at the end of this year. History says that's the case. And we've done really nothing different. I mean, we've tried to be aggressive in revenue, but for the last 5 years, we've wiped that out. And I'm confident that we'll do that again. And we're moving forward with some good ideas to start the year out. We know that council's ready to go, ready to move us forward. I think we're in good shape. I wouldn't exercise caution. I mean, I'm not saying throw it to the wind,
Well,
but
since-
let's run.
And we froze these positions, so really who is sacrificing? Our residents are.
Right.
That's who's really taking the hit by freezing those positions. And now that we have the ability to do that, and we've saved, and like you say, the sky's falling, we've come out ahead where we're in the positive, where this would not only help us in the sacrifice that we have made, but help the residents, the service to our residents.
And again, I would hate to be sitting here next year and say we froze 11 positions and we're $1 million to the good. And it just seems contrary to taking care of the city.
Councilman Oliver.
Excellent point. Really, and I get it, I think we have to make strategic investments with the best information that we have at the time. I think my question, and I know I've brought this up before, I mean, I do think we have to change kind of the principles, so to speak, in our financial budget making. So what do we have to do to change that approach, philosophy? I know that we're, you know, with Steve's predecessor, he had a certain approach as far as budget making that may be seen as unique or unconventional to most. But how do we change that? What needs to happen so that in a couple of years we are talking about balanced budgets at the onset, and then where we do have to spend what money that we have, you know, talking about strategy, talking about the areas that need it most. How do we get to that point? I mean, do we bring in different sets of eyes for folks to look at things? Do we? I'd like to see us, you know, lead at a department level at minimum once every few years a zero-based approach, at least engaging staff down the line to go in line by line as to what's necessary and what's not. My organization does it, albeit much smaller on a $4 million budget, but it is helpful and it's eye-opening to evaluate what our needs are. So, I mean, it's a very open-ended question, but what things can we do to kind of change that and flip it upside down so that we're talking about balanced budgets at the front end once we wrap our head around this and can move forward?
We've talked about zero-based budgets, and it's something that we explored a little late this year, but it's something that we're willing to incorporate. You know, I'm not sure another set of eyes is going to have an impact on our budget. We've all, I think the majority here maybe received an email from Wayne Padilla giving us a plan on how we move us out of this deficit budgeting that we have. And quite frankly, had we followed his plan, we would have cut 15 to 20 positions last year. And again, my point is Wayne is far better at this than I am, knows his job intimately well. But had we done that, we'd be down 15 to 20 positions, and we're going to have arguably $1 million+ reserve last year. How silly we'd look if we did that. And I realize that we all know things are coming. We know PERS is increasing. There are some things that as a city we can do to mitigate that to some extent that we should look at down the road. But the reality is the sky is not falling yet. The city is in a good financial position. I realize that sounds contradictory when I'm describing a $1.3 million deficit. But on average for 5 years, we've put away in our reserve $1.2 million. I'm not sure how else I can characterize that. You know, our bargaining groups right now are keenly aware of that and reminding us of that, and they're right. And clearly, again, I'm going to say there is a revenue imbalance, and we need to improve on that. At some point, we will clearly not come out on the surplus end. I mean, we just know that's going to happen. You can only ride this so far. Is this year the year that happens? I don't know. 2 years ago, 1.3, and we had a $1 million surplus. I mean, that's a $2.3 million swing. I'm reluctant to make a recommendation to you that says freeze 11 positions, and then we're clean in the next year.
And when I say additional set of eyes, really I think it's what tools are needed to support our staff. I know we have a finance team that works throughout the year and sharpening the pencil, so to speak, and in conjunction with our department heads and their teams. And so, and that good effort and hard work is not unnoticed. But what tools do we need, you know, to make that structural shift and that change in approach? So, you know, and it should be maybe a goal and priority and directive of this council to say, you know, we're doing away with that past practice, and our goal is to be close to zero or balanced at the front end. And I don't know how realistic that is in short order, but certainly it should be a multi-year goal, I think, moving forward. And so more it's a question of what is needed to get to that point.
Business.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, we have loves coming in. There's two tax measures that have the potential to, just maybe on the low side, potentially $1 million swing for us. You got SCA 20, and then you got the Mayfair that the SCOTUS decision just decided that now we get to collect other state, you know, online purchases. That can be huge. I know that Muni Services estimated, I think conservatively, 200,000 to 300,000.
Up to 200,000 was their estimate. A little bit below 200,000, but I'd guess 200,000 for.
So the point of fact is we don't know, but your 200,000 there. SCA 20 comes in. We don't lose any money. We don't have any large distribution centers. We gain, and so even conservatively, we're 400,000 to 500,000 between the two. That's a big difference. And then you look at what Loves can provide, and right there you're at $1 million, and we know that we're moving forward to encourage businesses to come in. We just, as I said in the workshop, we have to be really, really diligent in our economic development. That's the key. We can't, as I've said before, and I don't mean to be redundant, but we can't ramp up production. We don't make anything. And our ability to provide a level of service that our city expects is predicated on the city bringing in business. And we know geographically that we are stunted because of Fresno. And what we lose in sales tax driving down the road hurts us. We know that. We just have to work harder to make up for that gap.
If I might respond to that, what Council Members Oliver's question, we budget for full employment. We budget for all the positions being filled for whatever period of time that we estimate those positions will be filled. And when we have new positions vacant, we budget for them to have family benefits in case that person takes the family benefits. So there's a cushion that's built in there. And every year we have vacant positions. There's turnover in the police department, turnover in other departments. So those vacancies create budget savings. So we budget for full employment, but we don't realize that. And $1.3 million sounds like a ton of money. And if we're off by $1.3 million in a budget, we're way off. But the fact is that's 3.4% of our budget. You know, PD's budget's over $10 million. So 1/10 of that would be $1 million. So we could try to budget in advance and say, okay, we're going to estimate so many vacancies for the year that these positions won't be filled, or we could budget for a lower level of health insurance. But I agree with everything that's been said before. I believe that we can balance this budget this year. It's a 3.4% deficit of the total budget, and there have been positive things taking place. The RDA just refinanced the bonds, and that's going to bring in another $136,000 next year for property taxes for the city. So I think that there are things like that are taking place that will help us balance the general fund budget, and we will have vacancies, whether we budget for those frozen positions or not, that will help us come close to or erase that $1.3 million.
So as a point of fact, the chief just sent me a text message. We're projecting a $20,000 savings. That drops us down, and we know that when we close the books, we may, just in closing the books, erase that deficit. So I'm just saying that there's so many variables that come into play, and we really haven't. We continue to grow our reserve. We really haven't used that to deal with any deficits. We have found some way. Last year, it was at the beginning, we had to cut 3% of M&O. The year before that, we were freezing positions, and And we're always doing things fairly extreme in order to balance the budget. And PD's got 5 positions. They don't fill those for half a year. It's $500,000. I mean, there's a lot of money there. So I'll quit talking.
I'm going to ask Councilwoman Gallegos. She's been waiting for a while for a question.
So Tim, I know we do projections and estimate what's going to be for the budget for next year. So I've looked at some of the different departments, but like I looked at contracting services throughout each department, and some of them we estimate very low, knowing that we've seen the bills that come in through the month that we contract a lot more out. And maybe that's where, when Councilman Oliver's saying for another set of eyes to look in, maybe we should look at an area like that where our projections were so low, and that's where we didn't quite see the balance there.
You're talking about the contracted services budget line items,
Mm-hmm.
and that we under budgeted those?
Yes.
I don't know how to respond to that, but
Okay.
I'll definitely look at the details.
Yeah,
to
because
see.
and some I thought were kind of high, because we get the warrant lists that say what we're paying out for contracted services for each departments. And so if you kind of add those up throughout what we've seen, some departments were under, some were way above. So if we can maybe, like Councilman Oliver said, different eyes, look at maybe that area, to
Certainly.
maybe that's where we're kind of not getting even playing field there.
Contracted services, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to look
Okay.
at that more closely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to point out that you are going to have a new set of eyes. You're going to have a new city administrator that's going to be here and be obviously actively engaged. And the ideas that they'll bring, we hope, are dynamic, and that they can make some recommendations and move the city forward and take a look at those and ensure that our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted. So I think that in and of itself is a significant advantage for the city.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. You know, she brought up a good point, and Councilwoman Gallegos, the contract service, you know, and maybe it's something that we could just refine in a sense that we look at total projected contracted service, and at the end of the year, how much did we really contract out? That would be something that I'd be interested in looking at. But again, that would be another conversation. To Councilman Oliver's point is, you know, having to go down to that zero deficit type of budgeting. I mean, a 3.41%, like you were saying, Tim, I don't think it's that bad. So I know there's some variables that come in throughout the year. But is there a percentage where a city or municipality looks at and says, this is a percentage that you want to be under when it comes to a deficit? I mean, at 3.41, when I look at that out of our budget, I don't think it's a big thing. Obviously, a $1.3 million, because it's in the millions, sounds like it's big, but also the size of our budget is also pretty big. And like you mentioned before, $10 million from PD, 1% of that could equal up, you know, that's quite a bit of money. So is there a percentage that we want to try to stay under when it comes to budgeting?
We don't have one established at this point. I can certainly look and see what other cities have established as far as policies in that regard. But you know, offhand, I don't have any recommendations for that. But we can certainly look into that for next year's budget. The city administrators brought up some very good points with this slide here, bringing to our attention how much extra revenues we've actually brought in over the years. So. You know, we can do comparisons, see what percentage of the budget we've actually come in under, and we've done that in the past. It's been closer to the 5% area, above the 3.4 on average. But maybe we can build in that assumed budget savings of whatever percentage we think is right. But we could do that in advance and take that out in advance. Last year we kind of attempted to do that. We brought it down to the $911,000 figure, and then made a commitment to find the other savings, and I think that we've done that this year. So yeah, I think that we've got your direction on that as far as how we move forward in the future, and maybe balance it on the front end by saying we anticipate a 4% savings, which will bring us to whatever that number is going to be.
Well, I mean, I know there's variables out there that can't really give us the precise budget, but I mean, we can do, I mean, as Councilman Oliver had, do little things that might be able to help us get to that zero deficit type of deal. And the other comment that I had was, following up what you said here, Steve, if we write this out, I know previous councils have frozen certain positions. Do you see or foresee that that could potentially come back and double that deficit possibly in the upcoming years? Or maybe with the aggressive stance that the city wants to put up with economic development and businesses, annexations, do you feel that we'll be able to recover that?
Well, I guess the good thing is that we have the ability to react. First quarter in, we see that the city's tanking. Probably wouldn't necessarily manifest itself that early. Mid-year, we see that we're just not meeting the numbers. We can move to implement some changes at that point in time. So we're certainly not locked in on a path. If there's things and when we report that you're not comfortable with, we can address those things. I feel pretty confident that we'll erase a good portion of that. I don't know if this is the year that we don't. We know that PERS is going up. We know that by 2024, now I saw a projection that says 60% when we're at 40, 48 now. So it's hard to say. But I wouldn't make a recommendation to you that I don't think was legitimate, in that if I wouldn't purposely steer the city on a bad course. So I feel confident that we can do this, and I would, Tim's a finance guy. I think if you do this on the front end, that means that you're going to have to hold off on hiring positions. When we run vacancies, you experience that at the end. If you're going to recognize that on the front end, says that you have to keep some positions open. And I say we run and we see where we end up. Last year, no one was asked to hold anything, and we had 13 vacancies. And that allowed us to obviously erase $900,000 and come in with a surplus this year. That was through no fault of anybody. It just happened the way it happened because we're looking for quality people. We don't want to just hire anybody. We don't want to just fill positions with warm bodies. So we're selective, and that means that positions go vacant. I know from the PD's perspective, they wanted those 5 bodies the second they were available, and if they could have filled them, they would have. But they had to go through a lot of folks to ensure that we have the proper personnel patrolling the streets, and it's the same for public works and parks. They want to make sure that we have quality individuals because it's easier to supervise quality individuals, and it's easier to have a product that this city is proud of when we have people out there that are there to make a difference. And so we are going to have vacancies.
Tim, do you have a presentation?
Any further questions or discussion on the general fund? So, again, regarding the general fund, we're done with that. We're moving on. So, citywide budget highlights. Total appropriations for in this budget are $93 million. The general fund appropriations are $38.6 million. Enterprise fund appropriations amount to $32.3 million, and the internal service funds appropriations expenditures amount to $5.1 million. Special revenue funds we have in this budget $17.1 million. This shows the projected revenues for the city. The makeup of that, with 42% being the general fund, 35% in the enterprise, 18% in the special revenues, and only 5% in the internal service funds. And this shows the revenues on top again compared to expenditures for the same groups. And these slides are included in the budget itself, budget document. But I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have on those. Otherwise, I'll move on. Just hit the highlights of all those groups. The other than the general fund. So the enterprise funds, they're projecting a combined surplus of $170,000. That reflects capital outlay of $5 million. The water fund projections exclude any rate increase as directed by council, and still project a $1.45 million surplus. Of course, that's being set aside for future capital projects. And no other material changes have been made to this section of the budget, being the enterprise fund section, since the budget workshop. Then there's the internal service funds. They have a projected deficit of $41,000. The deficit is primarily due to scheduled replacement costs in fleet and IT. That's just because they're spending more in that particular year than they're bringing in for the replacement of equipment. And no material changes have been made to this section of the budget since the budget workshop either. Then there's the special revenue funds budget, projected deficit of $1.5 million. And no material changes have been made to this section of the budget since the June 5th budget workshop either. So tonight, the actions to be taken. This is a public hearing to consider a resolution adopting the City of Madera 2018-2019 budget, the 5-year CIP, master fee schedule, and the master penalty schedule. The 5-year CIP is attached to the budget, and it identifies nearly $148 million of future projects over the 5-year term. And the recommendation of staff is to conduct a public hearing and consider adoption of the resolution.
Thank you, Tim. Before we move on to public hearing, any questions of Tim or Mr. Frazier or anyone from staff? Doesn't seem like any at this time, so I will now open the public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience wishing to step forward and speak regarding this item, please come forward, state your name and address, please. Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for further discussion or direction. Councilman Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim, remind me again, is it within city, is it like our bylaws that we hold back 30% or 30% of our budget goes into fund balance? Is that a bylaw?
That is a resolution that was passed by council.
It's a resolution. That's okay.
And the resolution calls for 30% of the budget, of the general fund budget, to be set aside, an amount equal to that. So let's say we have a $40 million, close to that, general fund budget. 30% of that would be $12 million.
Right.
So we need to keep $12 million in our general fund, not designated for any other purposes. And we are there. We have, I believe the last time I looked at it, was about a $1.4 million in excess of that required amount that that is in undesignated fund balance for the general fund.
No, right.
Any other questions,
No,
Council?
thank you. I just wanted some clarification.
So I think the point there is a cushion there that even if we did realize the $1.3 million deficit during the year, I think we would still be maintaining the 30% threshold.
That's kind of what I
thought so.
Councilman Oliver.
Tim, as a reminder, can you elaborate as to when the critical timelines are for the posting of property tax as well as sales tax receipts for the city?
So to be able to be counted in the current year, in the past year revenues, it's 60 days. So by the end of August, we need to have those received and posted.
For FY 17-18, and that would be for property tax, and then
property tax and sales tax also comes in late, but our projections include that factor when we expect to receive those revenues.
I think throughout the year it should definitely make an ongoing exercise, and I think at those critical moments that we have you know, maybe a financial report or update there as to some of those developments, and we may already do that in some capacity, but I think that would be beneficial too as we work through this budget and its adoption throughout the year, and seeing those, you know, those critical numbers as far as actuals. And
right, we do that at mid-year, but that's about
February or March of this year, and I think having that information in real time as it's available to us, I think that would be prudent.
I think kind of a indicator for us is when we get a report from Muni Services, and maybe we put together something for council after receiving that to let you know how sales tax revenue are going. They're kind of a forecaster for how well the economy is going as well. And this last year was a banner year. If we have numbers like that again, you'll see that fairly early in the sales tax. So maybe, Tim, we can.
Absolutely. There's sections of the reports that we get from Muni Services that are confidential, but there are portions that we could include and share with the City Council. We don't have such service for property tax, and that basically comes in at, you know, 2 different months in the year when we get those big lump sums.
That can be
so
obtained
that's
by
kind of hard
the
to monitor that,
assessor's
but we could certainly look into that.
Assessor's office and bring that to us. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, very good suggestions. I believe we can do that with both property tax and sales tax. Shall we say on a quarterly basis?
I like that.
That would be perfect.
Okay.
If I may, City of Madera's mission statement, in a nutshell, is to provide service. We're in the service delivery business. You want to make sure your garbage is picked up. You want to make sure you flush the toilet or you turn your sprinklers on and they work. And when you call 911, that you have somebody who will call, or the fire department. And that's what we do. It's run as a business, obviously, because you make so much money, and if you spend more than that, then we're having discussions like we are before us today. But let's keep in mind that we are service delivery, and we need to provide a service to everybody in our community. When we worked very, very hard on Measure K, it was a service that we wanted to provide to the citizens of Madera. And the residents saw the value in it, the council saw the value in it, and we all fought very, very hard to increase a tax to pay for it, to provide that service. And over 80% of the people said, I'm willing to pay to get that service. And that's what we're tasked with as elected officials and policymakers, is to be fiscally responsible, to make the difficult decisions, and understand that we have to provide a service, and that service costs. And so when we talk about the 11 positions, we talk about adding to the planning department and to the engineering department and to our parks department. These are positions that us as council members lean on our staff to say, where are we with certain projects? And where are we with LUBs or all these other projects? And with a smile, we're not told we're understaffed, Mr. Mayor or Mr. Councilperson. We'll do that as much as we can. And I know for a fact that our staff is overworked and understaffed in these areas that we are talking about creating revenue, increasing revenue. And that's what I want to kind of hit upon. These positions, such as code enforcement or planning, are positions that will potentially, if the direction is set by this council, we can increase revenue. We can get the wheels of government to move quicker. But the direction I would like to take, and I would like the council to weigh in on it, is to set that policy and set that direction on where we're headed. Because although, Mr. Frazier, you did say service delivery, we want to maintain status quo, with all due respect, regardless of the budget, we can no longer continue to be status quo. We need to change the narrative. We need to change that direction. And I think we've done so. We've had discussions recently about economic development and what we're going to do different for economic development. And I think we're just on the forefront of that, but I think we're making great strides. Mr. Manfredi stood up here when we talked about the water rates that were in the paper, the water rates that had misinformation about what we're doing with water rates. And Mr. Manfredi himself said, if you really want to know where the problem lies, it's over the last 20 years and not increasing our development impact fees. And so if we're not having that conversation about being where we should be and moving this city forward, then somebody 20 years from now is going to have the same report. When we talk about annexation, there's money on the table. There's businesses that can and will come to Madera that should be annexed into the city of Madera. They want city services such as water and sewer, but they don't want to be annexed into the city. I think potentially we're missing out on a lot of money. And that's the direction that I would like to take, and I would like this council to take. I really, really appreciate the efforts of Councilman Rigby, Councilman Oliver, and Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez for the efforts working with the business community and changing that narrative and saying the city of Madera is open for business. We are not going to give away the farm per se, but we recognize there's areas in the city that are blighted. There's areas in the city that we will assist and help you open your business, expedite it quickly, as we are understaffed, if you are willing to move into certain areas of the community. And this wasn't from the dais. This was cold, hard, knocking on doors and meeting with a number of stakeholders in our city to say, let's work together and get this done. And really, in a short amount of time, I think we've had some great interest. That is changing the direction of where we need to go. Councilman Oliver mentioned earlier, what tools can we give staff? You're absolutely right. If there's something we can do as policymakers, we need to make sure that we give our staff the proper tools to be successful. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't give the opportunity for our new city manager, who will be coming in soon, to give him or her that opportunity to also weigh in on that, as we are making these discussions that will last over the next 12 months. I am not somebody who will risk other people's money, but if we don't change the narrative, if we don't change the direction of where we're going, we will be status quo, and we will have the same conversations over and over. As I look at these 11 positions that we have budgeted for, you're absolutely right, Councilwoman Gallegos. As I look at these positions, these are positions that our community deserves. These are positions that I feel will fulfill that service delivery. I truly think Madera is on the cusp. We're going to have a lot of dirt in the air very, very soon, and we need to address that immediately and decide on which direction we're going to take. Are we going to have not only the right employees, but the right employees for our community to move us forward? Where we're going with RDA and those funds, I think we're right on track as well. That too will enable us to put some dirt in the air. So I agree with you, Mr. Frazier. I'm not a light my hair on fire and see what happens kind of person, but I am a walk before I run, and I think that we are in the right direction as long as we give our staff the tools, as long as we, on a quarterly basis, without asking, that we're presented with a financial report that shows where we stand financially, and that would go for all departments, whether it's capital improvement, whether it's inquiries from new businesses that want to come to Madera, or existing businesses that are just not moving as fast as we want them to move. I would ask that those be brought before this council without being asked, and so that we can continue to stay on top of it and make those adjustments as need be, and not in May of 2019. I've closed public comment, but I would be happy to hear from you, Ms. Becker, if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a bit of a frog. I'm here representing the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter, and I was just wondering what consideration or review the council has provided for the needs of the residents with the animals at large. We've just had a stunning display of what could happen today with a woman's forearm literally being crushed. She's got a steel rod, and she's lucky she didn't lose the arm. from a dog that was irresponsibly kept and run loose. That problem is only getting worse because as we increase population, we increase animals, and unfortunately a lot of them are not altered, and as we saw today, are dangerous. So I would ask you kindly to please consider the needs, the residents' needs in regards to animals and public safety. It's a very, very real need, not one that's often at the top of anybody's list. But if you're considering public safety and service to residents, that's a big component of how we can serve our community.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can address that, we have negotiated with the county. We do have a contract that will be coming back to the city, back to the council. I want to make sure that as it comes back, it incorporates some of the discussion points, which is why I haven't responded, Ms. Becker, to you until the council, until we get it back from the county, and at which time we get that and everything is in there that we had discussed. We'll bring that to council for approval and we'll move forward.
And just for clarification, Mr. Frazier, it wasn't that long ago that we were down to one officer in animal control, and we have how many now?
2.
We have 2. And so without working on the weekends, obviously, we can't provide a 24/7 service. What is their schedule?
I'll leave that to the chief if he wants to address that. I think we've got 7-day coverage unless one of them is on vacation. So we have an officer there every day. Obviously, they can't work 24 hours. But unless one is in court or on vacation, we've got an animal control officer 7 days a week.
Okay. And maybe that's just a matter of using our social media page or letting people know what number to call, or just letting them know that even though it is a weekend, barring any kind of sickness or vacation, there should be somebody on call 7 days a week.
And I just want to point out, I mean, I know that's a tragedy, and I feel for the lady, and I think the 4th of July and the email that you got from the chief kind of represents that no matter how many people you have out, you can't be everywhere. And you know, they experienced that with the fireworks. As Mr. Block pointed out, you know, it was a war zone, and I would say it was one of the more peaceful war zones in recent years. But nonetheless, we know that there were illegal fireworks, and I realize that 2 animal control officers is probably just barely a minimum. But even if we had more, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'd prevent those things from happening. Circumstances like crime, I mean, very seldom are you there to be able to prevent an event from happening. And 2, 6, 8, 12, that event would have happened, unfortunately. And how we respond to that, I think, makes all the difference moving forward.
You're absolutely right. I agree. We're asked all the time to have traffic officer on every corner, and we just cannot do that. But what I think we can do is, if at all possible, have animal control at more neighborhood watch meetings. And if we can be proactive and pass out more business cards and have some neighbors call on the forefront for maybe some animals they feel could be a danger, and we can address it that way, I think that may be a whole lot better than possibly maybe being reactive to some of the situations that happen. DJ, I don't want to get off topic because my attorney is looking at me that we're talking about our city budget here. We're not talking about the FMAS. I mean, if you want to make a comment, fine. I just want to make sure that you understand that we're talking about our budget, and I cannot get off topic. It is a great concern. We certainly feel for the person who's been injured, and we know that this is not the only incident that has happened. And it is of great concern to us. But please, I'll give you a second to make a comment.
We'd just like to please advocate for more public education and licensing, enforcement, and spay and neuter, because without that, all the enforcement in the world isn't going to make a difference.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. Thank you. Any other comments from council before we move forward? If there are no other comments, I will entertain a motion regarding item C1 and the adoption of our budget.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt item C1 as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve item C1 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for your input. Moving on to item C2, this is a notice public hearing and consideration of introduction of an ordinance rezoning approximately 3.57 acres located 600 feet north of the northeast corner of the intersection of Adelaide Avenue and Sunrise Avenue from the R1 low-density residential zone district to the PD 6000. Mr. Boyle.
Thank you, Mayor Medellin. Council, it's a pleasure to present tonight. The Adelaide subdivision is, in fact, your item on your second item in your public hearing agenda tonight. The Adelaide subdivision is a successor agency project that comes before you after review by the Planning Commission. As a refresher, let's remind the council that rezones come first to the Planning Commission, who then forward a recommendation via a resolution to the City Council. It's through an ordinance that rezones are approved, and the council is the discretionary body ultimately as it relates to that ordinance. The property proposed for rezone tonight through the Adelaide subdivision is currently in the R1 low density zoning district. It's proposed to be rezoned to the PD Plan Development 6000 zone district. General plan is low density, and the general plan is consistent with both zoning districts. The property itself is located between Lily and Adelaide. I remember this property as the Hunter property. Many of you probably do as well. It's a accumulation of a little over 3 acres of land in 3 separate parcels. Why a rezone? If both of the zone districts are consistent with the general plan, why would we rezone this property? And it's really a matter of flexibility and parcel size. The R1 zone district provides for strict standards as it relates to parcel dimensions and parcel area. In the case of any R-zoned parcel, it shall be no less than 6,000 square feet. Provisions for a planned development zone remove that rigidity as it relates to parcel sizes and consequently allow for a higher yield. Our general plan asks for a greater density within the city's urban fabric. Hence, it makes good sense to rezone this property to a PD 6000 as a component of the subdivision of the land. Note that the average parcel sizes range everything from around 4,800 to over 8,700 square feet, but the average parcel size is consistent with the PD 6000 zone, 6,300 square foot average. Also, whereas there are specific setbacks in an R zone district property in a PD zone, there are some advantages in creating unique setbacks for the development, and within this project there has been some unique setbacks applied to it as part of the precise plan that was approved by the Planning Commission. What does that look like in the built environment? Blair Church and Plynn, working with the executive director, Bob Wilson, of the successor agency, have brought a 19-unit subdivision to the council, and ultimately, with your approval, the subdivision itself, the precise plan which provides for the physical development of the 19 parcels will be allowed to move forward, consistent with and contingent upon the approval of a rezone. And with that said, staff and the Planning Commission would recommend that the City Council, after considering public testimony, introduce an ordinance rezoning the subject properties. That completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Councilman Hawley has a question.
Yes, Chris, could you put that map back up? Looking at that, why would they have to come off of Adelaide instead of off of Lily?
The school is right there in front, no?
As it relates to the overall development of the subdivision, staff and the successor agency looked at multiple options as it relates to the development of the subdivision. There were some real concerns as it related to stubbing the cul-de-sacs off of the Lily side because of the traffic that's already there in place with the school. we also looked at, instead of dual cul-de-sacs, there's potential for bringing the current Soquel through and around onto Street A, or creating a circular lotting pattern. Ultimately, in the end, the two cul-de-sacs provided for the best yield in terms of number of lots, while providing suitable livability, walkability, and sustainability. All catchphrases that general plan looks for subdivisions to aspire to.
Will that affect any of that shop that's sitting there?
The shop, which is an existing non-conforming building in the city, what I'd like to see is, at some point in juncture, I'd like to see that shop incorporated into the overall cul-de-sac, and with the lot design that's in place, it would provide for the conversion of the automotive shop owned by future investments to be ultimately incorporated into the overall subdivision design and add 2 additional lots. At present, it's not a part of the project.
So the lot that shop sits on, is it owned by the same people that owns this lot right now?
No, the 3 parcels that are a part of the project, they're owned by separate owners. I think the piece that is the piece that's over here was owned by a member of the Massetti family, and then the other parcels were owned by the Hunters.
Thank you, sir.
That's right.
Councilman Rigby.
One of the things I've noticed, Chris, while working on this project with Mr. Taubert and now with Bob, one of the things we had talked about was a green element, be it a strip or something. We even talked about the possibility of connecting Lily Street, council member, to Annadale with a park strip, so kids could walk actually through the neighborhood and get to the school quicker. Is that element still there, or did the developers say, nah, that's not going to happen?
The element is not included in this subdivision.
Okay.
There is a provision for a decorative wall and a landscape strip on the Lily side, on the back side of the parcels. That requires that an LMD be formed to maintain that moving forward in time, but there isn't a requirement within this map to provide for a pedestrian connectivity element, a paseo of sorts that would link one or both of the cul-de-sacs with the Lily Street alignment.
That's too bad.
I know Councilman Rigby has been working on this for quite a while. I'm happy to see this finally come to fruition. As you had mentioned, you'd worked with former redevelopment director Jim Taubert, and now current. And those lots, if you remember what a year and a half ago, was ugly. I mean, just horrible for kids across the street at junior high to take pride in their school and have this across the street. So, Councilman Rigby, I know you've been working extensively on this, and I'm very happy to see this finally move forward and get some beautiful homes in the area. Mr. Wilson, you have something to add?
Yeah, I do just want to bring up one thing about the point of providing access for the kids to be able to get through the subdivision. And when we looked at that, again, it was decided that the traffic pattern, it brings kids out in the middle of the block, and it was a safety concern. So that's a major reason why we didn't end up going with that. Because I like the idea too. But
I know you liked it, and I think Jim liked it.
It was a safety concern, so that's why we backed off on doing it that way.
All right.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you for your input.
Excuse me, I do have another.
Of course, Councilman Hawley.
I'm looking, I know Charles, that's his district, but I'm there quite a bit, and I'm trying to figure out why wouldn't they put a street in between there? If you notice, if I lived over here on Adelaide, and which now they have to walk all the way down to the end, or one end or the other, in order to have to get across to Lily Street. Is there a proposed street that can be done to cut that street in half to where you don't have to drive all the way up to one end before you come down the other side.
The subdivision doesn't propose any connectivity directly over to Lilly. You are correct, Councilman, in that pedestrian foot traffic will traverse northwest and then onto the Bridge Street across, where existing pedestrian connectivity occurs between the school and the neighborhood surrounding it.
Are we putting sidewalks on the Adelaide then? Because I know I see on the south side there's sidewalks, but on that north side there's no sidewalks. Is that a part of the project?
Yeah.
Sidewalks where, Councilman? I'm sorry.
On the north side of Adelaide.
Oh, there will be street. There
There's
will
a yellow
be
car right on the corner of parcel 32 M62. It doesn't look like there's sidewalks on those four houses to the corner. Am I missing it?
Oh, the existing homes you're talking about.
Yeah, on the existing homes.
Those are not conditions of approval at present. Only improvements within the boundaries of the subdivision and the abutting street sections of the city are included within the conditions of approval that were approved by the Planning Commission for the tentative map.
Kids could walk through.
And I know it's not for this discussion, but we will have future discussions of the needs of walkability, especially in proximity to schools, and either improving sidewalks or actually creating new sidewalks. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. And as you said, I know this is probably not the conversation, but I do share the sentiment that Councilman Oliver and Donald Holly have. I'm sorry, Councilman Rigby, I'm sorry, and Councilman Holly. Now, the only thing that I would ask, Chris, is how would that be if you had traffic, though, coming through those streets? I mean, if you added, that's probably not a discussion we want to have today, but wouldn't that create more traffic going into these residents if something like that was proposed?
I'm sorry, Councilman. Concerning, I was distracted.
No, I get you. What I was saying is that I
growing a third arm right as we speak.
No, I get you, and no worries, Chris. It was just a comment. What I was saying is that I do appreciate the concerns that both my colleagues have here. My only other concern would be if that there was a walkway or some type of accessibility to the other side there. Wouldn't that create more of these people on the other end coming through those neighborhoods as well, trying to get to the axis?
It's a good comment, and there's always a positive and a negative as it relates to providing pedestrian connectivity. We don't have to think too far back to the connector that went from Riverside over onto Sunset and the controversies that came about providing connectivity to the existing cul-de-sacs that were there. Ultimately, those citizens successfully lobbied to have fences built, whereas they lost direct connectivity to that pedestrian walkway. So I'm not sure whether the citizens are ready to embrace paseos. I know that staff is going to continue to explore mechanisms that will improve walkability within the community and multimodal forms of transportation, whether that's with our feet or with bicycles and the like. And I know that we have open dialogue with the various departments as to the various issues that come with providing for paseos and walkways that provide bridges, both with our public safety, the police department, and making sure that those are safe and well lit. There's many factors that maybe we don't think about right away, but that ultimately staff continues to look at as we move forward.
And, if I may, Councilman Rigby, if you don't mind pointing out, what area were you describing, if you don't mind, so that maybe in the future, if another plan like this comes out, the
sidewalks of those existing homes.
So, Anna Delta Sawmill. Sawmill would be that street that runs perpendicular to the cul-de-sac that is already made. There's no sidewalks on those four houses to Sawmill. Once you hit Sawmill, there's sidewalks on both sides. newer subdivisions, both of them. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you
Yeah.
asking about like the Paseo option?
Yes,
Would have
yes.
been, so you'll notice, so that's the office right there of MLK.
Yes.
And that's the faculty parking lot. So kids would have been able to go right there in that open area. That was the original intent.
Okay.
I don't want to go on the record and quoting saying that Jim Tauber was like, the developer wasn't really excited about giving up space or giving up. Nobody wants a kid walking through their backyard or something along those lines. It was, and I get that. I understand that. This is just me. I don't know if I'm being selfish or not, but I just feel like we have a real opportunity to do something special here. And another brick wall with climbing ivy. I mean, you talk about frustrating Jim Taubert more. That thing's going to be tagged within the first week, especially in that neighborhood. No offense, Chief, but I'm sure, we cracked down. But I'm just saying it would be, we have an opportunity to do something really special here. And the last thing I want to do is put up an empty brick wall and say, I wonder what's going to happen.
If I may, Councilman, if you had a pass-through from one street to the next, though, it would be a very untenable situation for law enforcement.
Okay.
And not only would you have the back wall tagged, but you would have that strip in between the residents that would be tagged. And very tough to monitor that, very tough to ensure that you have lighting continuously there. It will be a maintenance issue. It will be a graffiti opportunity, far more so than the back wall that faces MLK. Just want to bring that up for consideration.
I took an opportunity as well to run to Google Earth to see whether or not there are sidewalks that continue and connect around. And there are sidewalks on the Adelaide Street, those homes back to Adelaide, and there are sidewalks along the Adelaide all the way up to and around onto Sawmill. So there is a safe route to school from those cul-de-sacs.
Okay. Thank you for that, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Councilwoman Gallegos.
I'm just looking at, to the right, Chris, we have residents whose front of the houses are facing out, and to the left, we have, that would be considered like a fencing, correct? So on top of that, we're going to add a huge wall for the new development, and it'll continue to the end of the corner. Is that correct?
Are we talking about the northern fringe, the frontage along Lily?
Yes.
Yes, currently there's an existing fence, and it has ivy growing in it. That theme would be continued with a wall and landscaping to encompass that wall. And so that would continue southward across the full northern frontage of the subdivision.
So who's going to pay for the water bill to?
Well,
that's going to be included.
The
in
landscaped area is included in the LMD. It's not paid for by the property owners. It's a component of the LMD, maintenance of the LMD.
We have a lot of people from out of town that come to MLK for tournaments, and that, to me, is, correct me if I'm wrong, does not look nice. A wall that's going to take most of that block. It's going to be a straight wall. I'm not an architect, but it would be possible to flop one of those subdivisions to open up on the opposite side. You know what I'm saying?
One of them.
Yeah, where you have one entry. That's a lot of traffic coming out on that one street from these both subdivisions.
I'm not the traffic engineer, but 19 homes being added onto Adelaide, and the trip counts that are generated, we're not going to see a whole lot of trip generation from the 19 homes. With the landscaping on the backside, I believe there's a 10-foot. The 10-foot PUE is a component of that landscaped area. So there should be reasonable depth to the landscaping to provide an attractive streetscape. I'll take an opportunity to hopefully refocus the council on the issue at hand, because the Planning Commission took action on the subdivision, and in order for it to be altered, it would have to be redirected back to the commission for their reconsideration based on your specific direction. The public hearing that we have here tonight has to do with the actual rezone, and the map is contingent upon approval of the rezone, and the council certainly is well within its powers to redirect the map back to the commission, but it's not under discretion at this point in juncture.
Thank you for that.
You're
Mr.
right.
Boyle.
Thank you, Chris.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
I will make one more comment, and that's to Councilwoman Gallegos' point that maybe something like a mural that maybe MUSD might be able to coordinate with, not sure if it's the residents at this point or maybe the developer in the future, but if that's a concern, then maybe that could be a display that can really show MLK's, just a thought there so that it doesn't look as bad as one would think.
That's a good point. There's some alternatives that maybe can be done.
Definitely. But to your point, Chris, we're not here for that today, so we'll carry forward. So thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Boyle? With that, I will ask for, did I open the public hearing?
Nope.
Thank you for that. At this time, I will ask if there's anybody in the audience wishing to speak on this particular project, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment and ask for title.
Introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Madera amending the official City of Madera zoning map to rezone approximately 3.57 acres of property, APN number 008102003, 008102007, and 008102008, located approximately 600 feet north of the northeast corner of the intersection of Sunrise Avenue and Adelaide Avenue from the R1 Low-Density Residential Zone District to the PD 6000 Planned Development Zone District.
Mr. Mayor, I move to waive further reading and introduce.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to item C3, this is consideration of a resolution setting the monthly health benefit allowance for the City Council of the City of Madera. Ms. Silva.
Based on direction from the last council meeting, the resolution before you reduces the city's premium, reduces the city's contribution to health insurance to match that of employees, which was reduced to match the new plan premium for the July 1 year. I think we talked about this a lot at the last meeting, but if there's any questions or further discussion, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
Thank you, Wendy. Any questions of Wendy regarding this item? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item C3 as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded, excuse me, to approve item C3 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Under item E, administrative reports, this is request to appoint a council ad hoc committee to work with staff to discuss and evaluate policies and business development opportunities related to cannabis industry as necessary. Mr. Frazier.
The council took action for cannabis a year and a half ago. And if I can refresh your memory, when you accepted or made the decision to have basically a cannabis-free community, you did mention that you would be open to discussions if opportunity presented itself. Well, in order for opportunity to present itself, we probably need to have some further discussion on what our ordinance will look like. If that opportunity presented itself, we would need to have discussion to see how we'd modify, what would be involved. And so what we're looking for is a couple council members to work with staff and explore those opportunities and have that discussion, look at how we might modify the ordinance, look at whatever opportunities are there, and then bring that back for a council vote. So we're looking for 2-3 members to participate with us in exploring what that might look like for this community. and whether it would be, I think the direction that I heard back then was we're not interested in sales, but if we had distribution, we had manufacturing. Those were things that you expressed an interest in looking at if opportunities presented. And so we need to do some work, and we'd like to get together with council and staff and see what we can put together.
With respect to Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, who has brought this issue up more than once, it was brought up simply because of the discussions we've had in budget discussions about thinking outside the box and possibly generation of dollars.
Yes.
And so what's before us today is just to have those discussions and evaluate. I think this council, as you mentioned, Mr. Fraser, has taken a stance. This by no way is a direction or even a decision. It's just to work with staff to see if we can bring something back to council for further discussion and also further evaluation. And so I think it's only appropriate on the ad hoc committee that Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez serves on that ad hoc committee. And I've had some discussions already with staff and also with others in the community that have raised some questions, and I think those have also hit up our planning department and made those inquiries. So I would like to, if it's okay with council, to also sit on that ad hoc committee and work with staff. I know what's recommended is 2, possibly 3. What I would like to do, unless a council member has a different direction, is keep it at 2 so that we can bring those recommendations back to 5 council members for further discussion and decisions at that time.
We would look forward to work with whoever you have, council.
My colleagues okay with that? Mayor Pro Tem, anything to add?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. I think in the past, the council and staff and the audience has heard me champion economic development, different streams of revenue, and I think this brings a good opportunity for us to really explore those options that we have and bring them back to our council. And we hope that we find a positive in this and that we can bring some revenues, and especially in discussions with the budget and all, that if we do happen to find ourselves in crucial times with deficits, then this could be a supplement that can help alleviate some of that. So you stand correct, Mr. Mayor, in that I have voiced that out, and I would be honored if I was part of that ad hoc committee. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Everybody's okay with that? Great. I think you have direction. Moving on to item F, council reports.
Mayor, can you just do that by motion so we have a clear record?
Mr. Mayor, move to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and Mayor Medellin as the ad hoc committee to discuss cannabis.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint myself, Mayor Medellin, and Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez as the ad hoc committee to work with staff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Now moving on to council reports, starting at my far right with Councilman Robinson.
Yes, I attended a sustainable groundwater management meeting, and the objective was review individual GSA water budget result with current land use and discuss how project and management action fit into GSP development. And also I attended the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Valley State Prison, and it came out that they would like to participate in the Neighborhood Watch program so they can convey how much they help the community. That's all.
Great. Councilwoman Gallegos.
I have a couple of things. I would like to commend our interim Public Works Director, Mr. Scarborough, on working with mosquito abatement team with the City of Madera and collaborating very well, that we have a program that we're going to put into place and work together as team players. Also, to let him and Bob Mack know that we appreciate the shark teeth and the high definition crosswalks being repainted on Yosemite for our high schoolers who will be coming in a few months. So kudos for that. And Chief Lawson for the fireworks. I didn't get hit as many times on an email, knock on the door, phone calls, texts. I did get a couple of emails that were, there was, you know, those illegal fireworks, but it didn't really sound like a war zone. In my block, in my corner, they were shooting off illegal fireworks. Within 10 minutes, an officer was there and shut them down. So presence was there. They were going up and down streets. I heard from a lot of people in my district especially. So thank you for those efforts. I know we did hear of other issues, but I think we did an awesome job. I commend the officers that took their time to be out there that night and not be with their families. And I know it was on a volunteer basis on having some of those officers come out that night. So I appreciate that. And as all my other councilmen know, Cold Stones opened up, had a grand opening. Great turnout. We had our fire that had three or four engines out. 3 engines? I think we had 3 engines out, and we had our commanders, lieutenant, and our chief. We had several council staff. So it was a great showing from the city of Madera to have a new young entrepreneur come out and open a business in the city of Madera. So thank you all for being a part of that. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Rigby.
Yeah, really quick. I also want to thank our PD last night. I thought they did a great job, and actually all week long. Last year, it felt like the 4th of July started June 30th, and so I think that having that extra force out there, I have a firework booth for our church, and so we volunteer there. And you would not believe if I told you the amount of people that came up and said, normally we buy illegals, but because of the way it's been cracked down this year, we're going to purchase Safe Sane. That was a win for me. I felt win-win, I guess, in more ways than one. But I thought, regardless of some of the complaints, maybe via social media and what, you guys can't be everywhere, but you guys were at a lot of places. And so I want to echo what the councilwoman Gallegos had said, and Sergeant Arnold did a great job of putting together a team that, man, those guys were everywhere, and I thought it was great. And then I also want to thank our Parks and Rec department for taking phone calls of the not so happy citizens that wanted to know where their fireworks were, and I thought that it's opened up a lot of dialogue for me locally with constituents that wanted the how comes and the why comes, and you know, when it comes to dollars and cents, especially theirs, they don't want to talk anymore. And so, you know, it helps though to keep the conversation. And I want to go on record as saying that I'm willing to remind this council that we said no for a year, and that doesn't mean it's gone forever, and that we want to continue to talk about what it looks like moving forward in 2019 as we reevaluate this maybe in a few months. Who are the stakeholders that we need to bring to the table, because it is a great event. We missed it as much as anybody else, and as much as you did. And I think, Marianne, you and your staff have done a great job, because you guys put together some awesome programs this summer, and Movies in the Park start up this Friday night, Despicable Me 2, so 8 o'clock, get a good seat. But thank you for taking those calls, and I know that makes for a 5th of July not so fun sometimes when your inbox is filled with the people who aren't so happy. But that's all I have to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Hawley.
Yeah. Well, y'all was lucky. I heard it all night long, but I do got to give it to the PD. They were there. On the southeast side, you could see them all day, hear them all. My wife didn't know what to do. She thought somebody was shooting at her. But I saw the officers out. They was on their job. They was circling the area quite a bit, because that's where most of it was at. And yes, I am upset because we didn't have the firework. I didn't know what to do yesterday. Normally I'm out there from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night at the golf course. So I was lonely. I had to sit in the middle of the street and watch the kids play. But it was a nice show to what they had. Some were a lot safe. But I think we need to really, like Councilman Rigby say, we need to work on that next year. I think we can do a better job and see that our Parks Department have their avenues and the transition and the funding and the people as well to make sure we can put this back on. Because everybody I looked around saying, we're not having the fireworks show, I almost told them something, but I couldn't. I was hurt. Also, I'd like to let us know, I know it's not public information anymore, that I'm very saddened about losing 2 of my key principals and 2 vice principals in my district. Sometimes as adults, we think we know it all, but we make mistakes too. And we got to find a way to, you know, we always want to punish somebody, but sometimes it's good to ask questions and sit down and get the right instructions on where we want to go. So yes, starting the new year, I'll be 2 principals, 2 vice principals short. Got to start all over again to break them into the neighborhoods. But I think as council people as well, we need to watch our actions as we go places and do things. We never know who's watching us, who's saying things about us. But if we're honest to ourselves and to our families, I think we can be a progress unit here. City, you guys doing a wonderful job. I put it on Facebook to let everybody know that how our city is keeping us running no matter what goes down. So I think you guys are doing an awesome job. Other than that, I stayed safe.
Great, great. Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medillion. If that was about my Facebook post, I'm sorry about that. That was just at the spur of the moment type of deal.
That's
But
all right. You
anyhow,
did you say? No.
there was a Facebook deal on, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Joe Dirt, but someone put up there for the Madera wrestling team, and I thought they did a great job on that parody there. But anyhow, I think they, like many organizations, were trying to collect funds for their, obviously to raise funds for their organizations. You know, and coming in to Fresno, you know, our captain in the plane did remind us that it was 4th of July, so I had an opportunity to look at 4th of July in the air. And when you talk about a war zone, you know, certain cities did participate in war zones, and it was quite the show. You know, that was quite a nice show. But I did want to say thank you on behalf of some residents. Chief, they were very pleased with the outcome of this year's efforts. Steve and the police department. Although I did also hear that there was still a lot of stuff. I didn't hear. I came in at 10 and I still could hear here and there, but to me, I didn't really see anything big. But I did want to make sure that I did pass this on to you, gentlemen that emailed me earlier. Wanted to really show his appreciation for your team and really keeping that safe this year. So thank you, and those are my comments.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilman Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, first I'd like to thank Steve and Tim and your staffs on the development of this budget. I appreciate your recommendations and, you know, kind of pushing the envelope, so to speak, at times and getting us to think a little bit differently. And I think it's essentially a good start. I was looking at this really as our first budget, so to speak, at least since I've been up here. And so I appreciate that approach and that hard work. I'd like to also thank Mary Ann and Keith and your teams. I've been on the phone quite a bit asking for updates to constituent inquiries, whether it be about road diets near Granada or water play features at Rotary Park. I just want to say thank you for your thoroughness and your quick response. It means a great deal. Oftentimes you guys are already ahead of it and, you know, reaching out to our constituents and providing updates where we can, and it really makes my job a lot easier. And so I really do appreciate, you know, you both and your teams for going above and beyond on those types of calls. And I'd also like to share an upcoming event that is important to me. It's one that I've participated in the last several years, and the Madera Special Needs Sports and Recreation. They're going to be hosting their annual superhero dance on Saturday, July 14th at the John Wells Youth Center. So as we all know, we partner with Madera Special Needs and Sports and Recreation for various activities and sport programming, but there's also important social components to what they do as well. So it's an event that's open to families and children of all ages. It's free of charge, starts at 6 o'clock p.m. Come and dress like a superhero and join them. It'll be a lot of fun, and I would encourage bringing your children as well and attending that. So with that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that. Business Watch is kind of started here very soon. I attended Business Watch at Lowe's with Councilwoman Gallegos, and although it was a very small crowd, I think we're on the right track. And so I want to thank Officer Wason Juarez for getting that off the ground and meeting with our business folks. and incorporating what we do in our neighborhoods. I think that's going to be very, very successful. I want to remind my colleagues that we will get back together with elected officials and staff from the city of Chowchilla as well as the county of Madera and have our intergovernmental meeting again this year around September. Sonia doesn't know it yet, but we are hosting. So I'll be talking to her about that tomorrow. The steering committee got together last week and discussed the issues that were on the table. And just as a reminder, homelessness, economic development for the county, as well as transportation and the 99 corridor up to the 152. And there'll be other things that we can add. But look for that in September. I'll get that date to you as quickly as I can. I too want to thank the police department for the 4th of July. We're certainly not going to eradicate knuckleheads blowing off fireworks, but I took an opportunity between 10:30 and 11:30 last night to just kind of drive around, and although I saw them, I think it was definitely a difference compared to years past. And I want to thank Measure K and to be able to have those resources and those additional officers. Whether they were in marked cars or unmarked cars. And Channel 30 did a great job, I think, days prior to, and letting people know just what we're doing. At that time, there were 600 pounds seized about 4 or 5 days before the 4th, and I think we ended up at close to 1,000 pounds seized of illegal fireworks, as well as citations and a few arrests and things of that nature. So that was absolutely fantastic. And also, Channel 30 did a great story on our business incentive, and I want to again congratulate Councilman Rigby, Councilman Oliver, and Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez for bringing that to light and letting people know that we are changing that directive and we are thinking outside the box, if you will. And so I thought it was great that Channel 30 did a great story on that last week and interviewed a couple of downtown people as well as Councilman Rigby. And speaking of team members, I got some calls a couple of weeks or so ago over some upset constituents in District 2 regarding landscape maintenance that was not up to par. And so I called Marianne, and she just took the baton. She made contact, her team made contact, called the constituent, and started a dialogue there. And Mas, I want to thank you and your team for taking the bull by the horns and addressing that issue, not just in that particular area, but there's other areas in town that is not what is acceptable to us. And the next time we go out to bid or the next time we are looking for somebody to keep those standards high that our residents deserve, I know you'll keep that in mind. But thank you for your efforts in doing so. And when we talk about Channel 30, are we talking about educating the public and using our website? Sometimes I think, maybe for me anyway, it's kind of easy to say that, let's make a video, and let's make a video of the incentive program, and let's make a video with the PD, using the crosswalks. I want to take this time and really have a shout out to Joseph Carrillo, man. This guy's amazing. He really, really is. What he does with these videos, again, I think it's easy for us to say, hey, let's make a video and get it out there. But he's the guy behind the scenes that really makes it happen. And so if anybody deserves credit for putting Madera on the video map, and he's got some wonderful ideas, really outside the box kind of thinking, and makes us look really good. To my man Joseph, thank you very much for what you do, man. We really, really appreciate it and look for more great things to come. And it looks like Councilman Robinson has something to add.
Oh, I forgot to add that for the Citizen Advisory Committee, it was for the Valley State Prison and the Central California Women Facilities.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, I will ask for Mr. Richardson to make an announcement. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, Mayor, the council now adjourned to closed session in 2 items. The first being conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. And the parties are as listed on the agenda. The second item is conference with legal counsel in existing litigation pursuant to subdivision D1 of Government Code 54956.9, and that's in 1 case as listed.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson.
All right, Mayor, the council adjourned to closed session in 2 items. First being conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. No reportable action was taken. The second being conference with legal counsel and existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, Subdivision D1. No reportable action was taken in that matter. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.